Chris, US lawmakers have passed a two-year budget deal which will allow the government to raise spending by hundreds of billions of dollars to cover its debts. The bill passed the House earlier this week and is heading now to the Senate, which is expected to approve the measure next week. The deal is expected to head off a potential debt default this autumn and should be a big relief for the market. Under the agreement, the government's spending will be raised by $320 billion. According to reports, it'll increase the budget for both military and domestic programs. Despite the optimism in some quarters, though, economist Peter Schiff thinks the deal will only bring short-term relief.
The dollar is going to collapse because the only value that it has is confidence. But how can you have confidence in a currency where the government is going to have to print so much of it because it has so much debt? The national debt is really a pile of unpaid bills. And the reason we're raising the ceiling is because we can't pay our bills and we have to borrow more money so that we can pretend that we can. But it's going to be impossible to maintain this pretense indefinitely. This budget deal is a disaster. It should be a wake-up call to our creditors that we are never going to get control of government spending.
The US economy is the biggest in the world with a GDP of more than $19 trillion. But even that hasn't dispelled fears of a financial crisis because of national debt.
More than 70 years ago, countries all around the globe put their trust in the US dollar.
The dollar is the strongest, most widely used currency in the world.
Among the strongest, if not the strongest currencies in the world for a long time to come.
We are an economic superpower.
Money's going to be moving here. It's going to be moving to the dollars-denominated currencies around the world. It's going to move to the United States. And so I think we're just in the beginning of a bull market in the US dollar.
Till this day, it remains the strongest global currency. Everything from oil to timber is traded in dollars. But is it really that strong? The US national debt is currently $22 trillion and growing every second by around 45 bucks. Since dropping the gold standard in 1971, the Federal Reserve was no longer obliged to redeem the national currency for gold, effectively allowing it to print more money. In the 6 years after the collapse of investment giant Lehman Brothers in 2008, the US printed $12 trillion. That's a stack of $1 bills reaching a height of 1.3 million kilometers, or stretching 4 times further than the distance to the moon. But you'd think, print more, and it's worth less. Except, it's not when it comes to the dollar. Because of its status as the world's reserve currency, everyone depends on it.
We are doing so well. Our country is becoming so economically strong again. And strong in other ways too, by the way, that the dollar is going to get stronger and stronger. And ultimately, I want to see a strong dollar.
Well, Donald Trump may have wanted to co-opt Russia for containing China, but the continued sanctions on Russia have only pushed it closer to China. And in a double blow for Washington, its trade war with Beijing has further brought Russia and China closer as they seek to forge deeper economic ties. Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping met in Moscow to decide, among other things, how to defang America's chosen weapon, the dollar. Looks like they're dumping it. Here's a report.
The dollar is facing a new threat. China has just launched yuan-backed oil futures, which will challenge the globally used petrodollar. China is the world's largest oil importer. Until now, it's been paying for its oil in dollars. The newly launched Shanghai Oil Exchange will allow China and other countries to bypass the standard petrodollar. It comes the very same week as Donald Trump unveils billions of dollars of tariffs against China. Oil economist Mamdouh Salameh says the broader implications of the new petro-yuan could be a game changer over the long term.
For official financial reporting, that will make it the latest nation to limit the use of US currency. Just last year, China set up a ruble-yuan payment system for transactions with Russia. Pakistan then announced plans to ditch the greenback as well for its trade with Beijing. Tehran-based economist Amin Mohseni Sharaglu thinks these are moves in the right direction.
Chris Hedges is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who, over the past decade and a half, has made his name as a columnist, activist, and author. He's been a vociferous public critic of presidents on both sides of the American political spectrum, and his latest book, America, The Farewell Tour, is nothing short of a full-throated throttling of the political, social, and cultural state of his country.
The president facing another major deadline, and this could affect everyone. The government runs out of money next Friday. So could there be a government shutdown? After the president recently dined with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, what was behind the president's tweet today and their immediate response? And how does it all help avert a shutdown? Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
It was just a couple of months ago that President Trump was chumming around in the Oval Office with Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, striking a temporary spending deal on their terms. A week later, bonding over cheese food and chocolate cream pie. But today, the president found himself flanked by empty chairs. Pelosi and Schumer boycotting a planned bipartisan sit-down after Trump attacked them on Twitter. Meeting with Chuck and Nancy today about keeping the government open and working. Problem is, they want illegal immigrants flooding into our country unchecked, are weak on crime, and want to substantially raise taxes. I don't see a deal.
The president said, I don't see a deal, 3 hours before our meeting, before he heard anything we had to say.
Schumer and Pelosi said thanks, but no thanks.
They've been all talk and they've been no action. And now it's even worse. Now it's not even talk.
It's a bad time for an impasse. Funding for the government runs out next week, and there's no agreement on the big issues. Defense spending, legal status to the Dreamers, the border wall.
Do you believe there will be a government shutdown, Mr. President? And would you blame Democrats if that happens? Would you blame
If that
Democrats?
happens, I would absolutely blame the Democrats.
All right, John Karl with us live tonight from the White House. And John, President Trump said right there he'll blame the Democrats if there is a government shutdown. Bottom line tonight, John, how likely is it?
David, I've covered a lot of these spending battles, and it seems to me there is a high likelihood that this one is heading for a government shutdown. And remember, government funding runs out a week from Friday.
All right.
On Monday, according to the U.S. Treasury Department, the U.S. national debt topped $22 trillion for the first time in history. Business Insider reports that the record follows a year where the budget deficit was $779 billion, the highest since 2012. And the amount of debt issues topped $1.3 trillion, the most since 2010. A debate is growing around how much the nominal amount of government debt really matters to the economy. The recent acceleration in outstanding debt was driven by two recent legislative changes. One is the Trump tax bill, and the other is the bipartisan budget deal that passed Congress.
On the Las Vegas Strip, right across from the Mirage, is this.
In Sin City, it's the insect invasion, putting on a show no one can escape.
They popped up out of nowhere.
A 24/7 onslaught of grasshoppers that really sticks with you.
What the heck, dude? You're all covered in locusts.
I know.
You're just covered in them, dude.
For many, the first impression felt downright biblical. A migrating horde of bugs so big, you could even see them from space. Experts say a soggy winter plus a mild spring made conditions perfect for the pallid-winged grasshopper, a migratory species that should be gone in a few weeks. But till then,
one thing they're known to do is mate, and that's why there's so many of them around here.
To make matters worse, they're attracted to bright, especially white lights, finding their match made in heaven on the Vegas Strip.
I've seen people running around away from the grasshoppers.
Scientists say the invasions only happened a few times over the past 30 years, and the grasshoppers pose more of a nuisance than a threat. Either way, the critter takeover has those in Sin City hoping for once.
This is kind of weird.
What happens in Vegas?
That's gross.
Doesn't stay here. Morgan Chesky, NBC News.